We're sitting down here today with Australia's leading emotional intelligence educator. This woman has been featured all across social media. She's changing lives at a rapid pace, and the things she's about to share with you are going to help you be happier, healthier, wealthier, and ultimately live the life that you deserve. So without further ado, we get to introduce for episode 101 of the Empowered Man podcast, Nerida fucking Bint.
What a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome, and I hope you don't mind me dropping that fucking
Not
in
at
there,
all.
but there's going to be a few F-bombs today. So for everyone listening at home, I would love for you to explain a little bit about who you are, a bit of your story and what you do, and then we'll dive into some tactics and strategies.
Yes. Okay. So I'm Australia's leading emotional intelligence educator. Now, I suppose I came to be in this role because I actually wasn't always in this role. I would say I actually grew up very emotionally immature. So I actually opened a couple of Australia's largest women's only gyms and ran those for nearly 10 years up until the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened, and weirdly around the same time as both of my gyms being closed, I also went through a breakup with a guy that I was sure I was going to get married to and have children with. And it really rocked me to my core. Like it really, really, for the first time, woke me up. And I think prior to that, I'd gone through breakups before, but I'd always been a bit of a victim. I'd always assumed it was the other guy. It was never my fault. And here I am at 38 years old, really desiring to be a wife and a mother and to have this successful business. And it was all crumbling around me. So it was the perfect storm for me to sort of really sit down and look at myself. 4 months of lockdown. I remember really, really asking myself, what is it about me that keeps creating this pattern in relationships where, I'm not chosen, I'm not pursued, I'm not worthy of love and marriage. And it was the first time I really understood that my childhood, patterns and behaviors and emotions were getting in the way of my relationships. And it was the first time I really took responsibility for my part in the breakup, which was very painful. And it's funny, but in the process of that, I remember getting onto Google and Googling, what is it that men look for in a wife? And the answer that came up was emotional connection. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time. I remember thinking to myself, what does emotional connection even mean? Hence my, complete immersion into this topic. So then I started understanding, my emotions and other people's emotions and how we feel connected to people who it really can accept us and welcome us and hold space for us. And I really started to realize how emotionally volatile I really was, especially with a partner. And so I was studying this and also running my gyms on and off with lockdowns, and the fitness industry became more and more, unappealing. And then I was really enjoying this coaching. I just had people reaching out to me, asking me to coach them. So I decided to make the switch and to sell my businesses and dive into this full time. And I've been doing this full time now for 2.5 years, public speaking on stages in front of thousands of people, creating online courses. I run a course called Emotional Intelligence 101. So I love that this episode is a 101. Anyone that wants to buy that course, I'm going to offer you a 50% discount. Use the Love 50 code. This work has infinitely changed my life, the way I feel connected to people. And prior to doing this, I never once had a single person ever say to me, Nerida, I just feel so accepted by you, or I feel understood by you, or I feel comfortable and safe around you. And now I hear those words constantly by clients, friends, partners, family, everybody. And so I'm so grateful that I stepped into this path because it's added to my life in so many ways.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. There's so much to unpack here. So you talked about responsibility. The Empowered Man, the company, the movement is all about responsibility, extreme ownership of your thoughts, feelings, actions, and reactions.
Yep.
So I'd love to dive into what that actually means for you. And you also alluded to this idea of what is my role in this relationship, right? Yep. I'd love for you to explain and to share your thoughts around what the ideal male-female relationship looks like. Now we're gonna cause some issues and some political correctness here, but I'd love to know what a man wants, what a woman wants from your professional perspective. So let's start with responsibility. What does that mean to you as a woman? And also, what does it mean as a man? Noting we're different in many ways. Yeah. How would you explain that?
So when we're not emotionally mature, we do one of four things. We either project, we deflect, we dismiss, or we minimize. And so projection is, have you ever accused your partner of being on their phone and not wanting to spend time with you?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so that's projection, right? Underneath that, it's actually that you're feeling a little bit lonely and disconnected and you're wanting to connect. Dismiss is where we say to ourselves or others, you shouldn't worry about that. That's not a big deal. It's not worth, feeling XYZ over. Deflect is when we use humor to lighten the mood because we feel uncomfortable. And then minimize is where we try to use comparison to compare, like, you shouldn't feel this way because XYZ is so much worse, or someone else has it so much worse than you. Say, for instance, you might be married to a beautiful woman, but yet you're infertile and you can't have children. Well, you shouldn't be upset because at least you have a wife. Now, when most people have one or two of these that they really are strongly have picked up, emotional maturity means being able to let go of those protective behaviors and become more emotionally mature, and being able to hold space for somebody else and to be able to be open to hearing the feedback they've got to give you. And while also looking at that and getting curious about what might be true for you. And then it's also about yourself, overcoming I'm personally someone who tends to project. So what I need to do is I need to really take time to process, what am I feeling here? Because I instantly, when I feel emotionally triggered, I just want to point the finger. I just want to straight away, like, you this, you that. So I need to really take time to ask myself, okay, I'm noticing here that I'm really angry or upset with this person. What's underneath this? What am I actually really looking for here? And why am I so upset by that? So I think that when it comes to responsibility, the one thing I wish for people to take away from this is to practice the pause. Get curious about your inner landscape and what might be going on for you and what you might need. Yeah. And in a relationship, I think it's really important that we do this for ourselves and we also do it for another. Now, we're not responsible for our partner's emotions in a relationship, but we should care about them. We should want for the other partner to feel safe, secure, happy, accepted, connected. And when that's not happening, it's the only thing that gets in the way of people being able to be open to that is two things: their fear and their shame. I'll tell you a little story. When my partner that I was, when I went through the breakup, I've had relationships since then, but we'll talk about the 2020 breakup. When we broke up, I remember him saying to me, Nerida, I feel like I'm just not good enough for you. And I thought that meant he felt like I was too good for him. Two very different things, right? And I felt very confused by that. I thought, well, if I'm if I'm someone who's a worthy woman, why don't you want to be with me? I didn't understand it. Now, we broke, and I remember we went to counseling, we did all the things, but because I had so much fear and so much shame, I was unable to look at my own stuff. Like, the therapist was sort of pointing at me a little bit and I just couldn't see it. I just kept deflecting, right? 6 months later, I was at a barbecue with a friend, a couple that I knew really well, and he'd been a bit of a player before he'd met her. And I said to him, what is it about her that made you choose her? Like, I was so curious, He'd had so much freedom, but then he committed to this one woman. And he said, Nez, she's the only woman that I knew was too good for me, but never made me feel like that. And it just all clicked. All the moments, all the ways that I used to complain, I used to point the finger, I used to criticize him, I used to judge him, I used to, not be happy about things that he would do. It all came flooding back. And so then I could see I was in this pattern of projection. I could not communicate what I needed, how I was feeling. Yeah. And so, that, and I look at that version of myself who was unable to, and it was so heartbreaking to realize this 6 months after we'd broken up, because I was devastated. That relationship rocked me for 2 years. So it was so hard for me to see that I had played such a huge part in that breakup, and all I wanted to do was go back and fix it. And by then, time had passed, it had moved on. But it was still really beautiful for me to be able to go back and just to honor that with him and just say, I see it now 6 months later, and we had a really beautiful repair conversation. Relationships are always doing this cycle. They're always going through connection, rupture, repair, connection, rupture, repair. Now, what most people do is go through connection, rupture, sweep it under the rug. Connection, rupture, sweep it under the rug. Most people don't know how to have these conversations to repair. And any relationship dies not from one incident, it dies a death of 1,000 cuts. So it's all those moments of not repairing over and over and over that actually end up breaking a relationship. So what I do is I teach people the ability to repair.
So powerful.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys that come to us, they are trying to repair, but they've got millions of cuts.
Yeah.
They've been sweeping under the rug, making money, providing. And by the time it is, I don't love you anymore, I can't do this anymore, it's too late. So it's almost the opposite of what you went through. They are the ones who are deflecting, sweeping under the rug. Something a lot of guys do, and I've noticed myself do this as well, is we do say, it's all good, don't worry about it, because we're trying to put on that mask and be strong.
Yeah.
So if you put it on the other side for a man, how can a man, when he knows that he's working too much, he's stressed, he's triggered, he's deflecting, he's following those 4 things you talked about, how does he become aware enough as a modern day man to work on those things? Because it's so easy to just leave it until it gets too late. You have the heart attack, your partner leaves. You weren't aware of it.
Yeah.
So how does someone become aware of it? How does a man or a woman actually address these things before they become worse?
The number one skill that I wish more people focused on is what we call emotional attunement. Now, most people live in relationships. Most people are so disconnected from themselves emotionally, they can't even begin to connect to somebody else. Everything in the world is a reflection of your relationship to yourself. So right now, all of my relationships, I have a much better gauge on how people are feeling around me because why? I worked so much on working on my emotional attunement to myself. So the word attunement means to tune in. So right now, like I'm sitting across from you, you look pretty relaxed, you look pretty calm, you look fairly regulated. Now, my ability, if you were to get heightened or to become stressed or to become scared or to become angry, irritable, my ability to register that and notice that and tune into that and to be able to get curious about why you might be going through that and to constantly be tuning into you and me at the same time. Now, not to the point of hypervigilance. So some people are people pleasers, right? And they're overly attuned to somebody else and not attuned to themselves at all. We need to make sure that we're also tuning into our own experience because you think about it, right? Energy is constantly we're constantly transmuting energy between each other. So if you and I, when we arrived together today, if you were really relaxed and calm, but I was super anxious and nervous, you would have picked up on that unknowingly, right? You might have been conscious of it, but you would have picked up on my energy. So what we have to do is we have to understand when we are doing the work to emotionally regulate, emotionally attune to ourselves, then all of a sudden we become more emotionally mature. So that means things like checking in. How am I feeling today? Am I calm? Am I feeling confident? Am I feeling secure? Am I feeling courageous? Am I feeling solid, steadfast? These are sort of the characteristics that we look for in men. Now, it's not to say men can't have emotions, and I really encourage them to. But then it's the ability to go, wow, I'm really snapping at my wife a lot. I'm noticing I'm quite agitated. Okay, what's going on underneath that? And then being able to share that. Hey, I'm noticing I'm feeling really agitated. I need to just go and do something to practice and release that, right? Now, there are 3 in the emotion wheel. There's like a beautiful wheel that has all of the different emotions in it, right, that I really encourage everyone to get. We have a few primary emotions. We have anger, sadness, fear, joy, and then disgust. So if you haven't gone and watched the Inside Out movie already, you better do yourself a favor and do that. It's such a good movie. Now, the 3 main heavy emotions, anger, sadness, fear, to release those emotions, I recommend these things. Now, most men tend to struggle with anger. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I feel it every day and I teach this to thousands of men. But I fuel it into things.
Yes. So I recommend using primal movement to release anger. So doing something to allow that to move through the body. So boxing, jogging, jumping and shaking, screaming, growling, like just going out and letting it really move through you, like finding a healthy way to get this out. Now, the funny thing is men roll their eyes when I say that often, but the worst thing you can do is leak unhealthy anger onto your partner or your children. And this is what most men do because they suppress the anger over and over and over and it doesn't go anywhere. It just leaks out. So sarcastic comments, rolling your eyes, slamming a door, all these ways are ways that you are leaking out unhealthy anger. So I really recommend even jiu-jitsu is a great way to like release that. I think there are so many great ways for men to release these emotions. Sadness is tears, allowing yourself to just allow the tears to move through you, because the funny thing is when you allow an emotion to move through you, it's 90 seconds and then it's gone. But most of us resist it and push it down, so it festers for longer. Now, you think about it, right? If you did a hiccup or a yawn or a cough, you would never judge yourself. That's just your body's natural way of rebalancing itself. Tears are no different. Tears are your natural way of your body finding balance. And then there's fear, which is breath work. I'm a big fan of box breathing to reduce fear. But I would say most women struggle with fear. Most men struggle with anger.
Absolutely.
So finding a really checking in with yourself every day. And then if you're noticing something's bubbling up, setting aside some time as soon as you can to go and process that through the body. You cannot do it all in your thinking mind. You have to actually allow yourself to express that emotion and also to allow yourself to feel more comfortable with it. Because for me, I have an emotional home of rejection and sadness and loneliness. Now, if I don't allow myself to sometimes feel that feeling of being rejected, that shame, then what happens is I avoid ever putting myself into scenarios where I might be rejected, which goes against the very thing that I consciously want, which is to be married and have a child. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. You're attracting what you don't want.
That's right. So I need to, instead of avoiding ever like being rejected, I need to actually get more comfortable with that emotion so I can tolerate it more. So men, I believe, actually need to get more comfortable with healthy anger and enjoy expressing that in a healthy way. And then you will naturally feel more calm and at peace day to day with your family and your home life.
Absolutely. And that emotional home you talk about, how does a man build that? Because when I think about anger, for me, it comes up almost every single day. I see it with so many of the men we coach, and they do judge it, and they get angry at the anger. It's that feedback loop of hell.
Yeah.
One of the things we teach is to write down your thoughts and feelings every single day.
Yeah.
That emotional attunement, was that the language you used?
Yeah, yeah.
That's like an awareness, right?
Yeah.
You're aware of the anger. Oh, I'm feeling angry today.
Yeah.
You don't judge it. You feel it and you go, what does this mean? What's coming up? Why is this coming up? So how does a man create that emotional home where he can be aware of that anger instead of bottling it up? How do you do that?
I love that question.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to touch on, the only reason we judge an emotion within ourselves is because a parent judged it first.
Yes. This is the childhood.
Yes, this is the childhood stuff. So the work I do is 3 parts. It's the past, it's the present, and it's the future. So the past is recognizing, where did these patterns and these judgments and these self-criticisms come from? Like for me, I feel rejected a lot and I fear that emotion. When I think about some of the things my father did to me and said to me, it makes so much sense that emotion is so strong in me. He used to say to me, you're the black sheep of the family. He would make me go off and sit separately than the rest of the family. He would constantly isolate me and push me away from the family, right? He always told me I was a bad kid, and then he always, in my eyes, idolized my brother and sister. Now, I'm older now and I can see that that's not so much the case. He had trauma himself. Now, but when I look back at my childhood, it's like, wow, no wonder that scares me so much, because that takes me back to that old childhood moment. The reason why so many men judge their anger is because a mother or a father would have judged their anger. When they would have expressed anger, a parent would have either told them to stop or they would have gotten up and walked away. Now, what's important is we have 2 systems. We have an attachment system and we have a defense system, okay? So our attachment system is seeking love, connection, safety, understanding. These are things that I really, truly believe every child needs to develop a secure attachment style, to be confident in the world. So love, connection, safety, and understanding. That's a big one. Most people don't know how to understand another person. Then we've got our defense system, which is what we use when we have an emotion, when a boundary's been crossed or a need's not getting met. That's when we express our anger or maybe our sadness. Now, if when we go to use our defense system, attachment is taken away, we as children will learn to push that down and we will stop using our defense system because love and connection overrides anything else. Okay, so this is why so many men grow up to be people pleasers because they first, when they expressed anger or disappointment or any sort of emotion to a parent, usually often their mother, the mother would have judged them and maybe walked away or felt triggered, upset. So that man learnt, when I express this part of me, love is taken away from me. So this is bad.
Yep.
So no wonder they judge themselves, okay? So that's the first thing, to just understand that, right? Now the next step is I would say, to learn how to communicate, and it's okay for you to feel an emotion. You know, I had an event last weekend that I spoke at, and I was I did the event for free, and the event ran way over time, and it made me angry because now it meant that my day was pushed out. I had an expectation in my mind as what time I was going to leave. And I had a very healthy way of saying, the lady who was organizing it knew I was angry. She came up and she's like, "You okay?" And instead of me lying, but instead of me reacting, I said to her, "Look, I'm actually really annoyed. I'm really angry right now because I feel like my time has been wasted. This doesn't feel good to now be an hour behind." And because I could just communicate that in a healthy way, say to her, "I just need some space. I'm okay, but I am angry about this." I could see she reacted a little bit, but that's my way. It's okay for you as a man to say to your partner, "I'm noticing I'm feeling really frustrated. I'm noticing I'm really angry. I'm noticing this." Okay? We need to be able to be honest about that because you might lie. You might say, "I'm all good. I'm all fine." But deep down, your body is betraying you every time. Your body, your tone, your eye contact, all of it.
Yeah.
And a woman will not trust you if you do not be honest.
Yeah.
So, then you've got to understand, because usually we're angry about something that reminds us of the past. There's a great quote: "If it's hysterical, it's historical."
I love that.
So have you ever had an overreaction to something and you
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what does that remind you of in the past?
Of course, it's always something in the past.
It's connected, right?
Yeah.
So then there's a part of us that has to understand that, right? We need to sit and go, okay, I'm angry about this right now. Part of this isn't really about this situation. It's about something else in the past. But when you can, as a man, bring this to your partner, can you give me an example of something that a typical scenario one of your clients might experience with their partner? And we can.
Absolutely. A big one is working all day. You come home, the wife's upset that you've been working all day. She yells at you or gives you shit for it, and then you feel judged and upset. Then you go to bed and you just want to have a little bit of sex, and she's tired for the 7th night in a row, and you don't feel understood or appreciated for all the hard work you do. So the stories go rampant in your head.
Yes, perfect. Great question. Okay, this is why emotional intelligence is so important. So I'll talk you through a little story, something that just has been really alive within me recently. So I dated this guy recently that I dated a year ago. We sort of reconnected. It's probably been the most emotionally safe relationship I've ever had. He's always really been open to listening to me, and I've always felt safe to express to him what was going on. Now, we dated a little bit, back and forth, and we've decided to finish things off because we're in different places in our lives. But what was so interesting to me was there were so many moments where I was so angry at him. And because I'm able to pause and ask myself, why am I so angry, without projecting, and I'm sitting and I'm processing and I'm sort of like, okay, well, I'm really angry about that he did, but why am I so angry about that? Because the week before he did the same thing and I thought it was funny. Or, I'm angry because he didn't check in with me at this point and I felt really distant, or I felt like he was avoiding me. So then every time I would notice this, I would bring this to him. So I would notice my body go between feeling really open and like wanting to be connected with him physically, like wanting to be intimate with him, and then sometimes being really closed off and repelled by him, even repulsed. Now, what's the difference? Every time I felt open and connected was because I was able to express to him like, hey, These are some stories I'm telling myself. These are some things I've been thinking about us. What do you think? And because he was able to listen and sort of like validate it, and we were able to have that conversation back and forth, we could sort of flesh things out. And then all of a sudden I would go from being closed off to being attracted to him again. So men need to learn emotional attunement to their partner, because I'll tell you this, what I have come to understand is it's not about the working late. It's not about he doesn't support her with the kids. It's actually not about any of those things. Because what I've seen women with 6 children with a hardworking husband, but yet she's so in love and so attracted to him because he's emotionally intelligent and they have that connection. He's leading the relationship.
Yes.
I will die on this, but women deep down want a man to lead them emotionally, physically, sexually, financially, spiritually, every day of the week.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And that's transformed my relationship with so many of the men we coach is being that leader. There's so much to unpack here. So one thing we talk about often in the program is emotion is just energy in motion.
100%.
So a lot of men build that emotion up throughout the day, stress, putting out fires, going to war, making money. They come home, they don't know how to express that emotion. It's stuck within their body.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned the power of the pause.
Yeah.
Before you walk through the door, take a breath, walk through, and then when your partner says, "How was your day?" instead of saying, "It's fine," say, "You know what? It was a really rough day."
Yeah.
And being able to say, "I'm feeling quite angry right now," just like you said.
Yeah.
And being able to share that anger, that emotion without tone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, every man can do that.
Yes.
And just hearing that out loud makes you go, I could do that too.
Yes.
The second one is for men being aware of what everyone around them wants. And we can do this in business. We can go into our business and see that an employee is upset or triggered and change the way we communicate.
Yeah.
I believe in a relationship, there are 5 things: love, appreciation, support, understanding, respect.
Yes.
We call it laser focus.
Yeah.
So the love languages, the working late, the intimacy, all of that creates an emotion. I feel loved. I feel appreciated. I feel supported. I feel understood. I feel respected.
Yeah.
Now, you just shared a bunch of tools that men can use to have that attunement. What does a woman really want from a man? And what does a man really want from a woman? And how can we in day-to-day life practice giving that to each other while also being successful, while also being a dad, while also providing? Like, how do we balance all of that?
Yeah.
And how does each side get what they want? Like, how do we do that?
Okay, so if you've ever heard of the Gottmans?
Yes, yeah. They're huge in the marriage industry. They send me emails all the time.
Yes, great. I'm a big fan of their framework called Bids for Connection. So every single day we are constantly bidding for connection. You know, when I see you, "Hey, Tony, how are you?" That's a bid for connection. Oh, it's a nice day outside. Bid for connection. Where do you want to sit, Nerida? Bid for connection. We're doing this constantly. So you're doing it with your partner, you're doing it with your kids, you're doing it with your colleagues, you're doing it with your clients. Now, what often happens, and there are 3 ways that we can meet those bids for connection. We either turn towards, "Yeah, it is a nice day today." We turn away. "Oh, yeah, I suppose it's all right." We turn against, "I don't have time to look at that. We're too busy. Let's go." So what I see happens in relationships is, and in order for a relationship to thrive, and this is any relationship, right? Our relationships with our parents, our friends, all of it, we need to turn towards 80% of the time. So 4 out of 5 bids for connection, we need to turn towards in a positive way. The biggest thing I see break down in relationships is we're distracted. Someone's bidding for our connection over and over. Like, "What do you want to have for dinner?" This, that, blah, blah. When you walk in the door, "Yep, how you going?" Like, it's just a quick, maybe a little bit of eye contact, if any. What we need to do is we need to actively look to improve our bids for connection. When the wife is speaking to you, you need to find a way to stop what you're doing and meet that moment in connection. Another thing I'll say is I think that what we need to do is we need to bring more intimate, vulnerable, beautiful moments into everyday life. So for me, intimacy isn't just in the bedroom. Intimacy begins with a little bit more eye contact than is normal. You know, touching someone really, really softly when you're speaking to them. You know, all these little ways, especially when we're communicating hard things. Like, you know, there are so many things. You could say the same sentence in 5 different ways.
Yeah.
You know, you coming in the door and saying, "I've had a really hard day." You know, if you come in the door and you're like, "I've had a really hard day."
Yeah.
that's like projecting a bit of anger, right? Or if you come in the door and you grab Rosie on the arm and you're like, I've had a really hard day, and you look at her and you just brush her arm as you say that, that is instantly connecting.
Yeah.
But still what you're doing is you're sharing with her honestly where you are at. And that's really what we need, right? Most men, I think, naturally want that woman at home to be that soft place to land when they're out there. Like when they're out there fighting their wars, doing their thing, you know, in competition with other men, the last thing they want to do is be in competition with their wife at home.
Agreed.
Yes.
If I can just jump in there.
Go for
Rosie and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Peace.
Yes.
I'm at war all day.
Yeah.
My clients are at war all day. The one place I want peace is at home.
Yeah.
And I found you mentioned the leading, what a woman wants is leading.
Yep.
Men think that vulnerability is weakness. That means crying in front of your partner or complaining or bitching or moaning. That's not vulnerability. Real masculine vulnerability is being able to say, you know what? Today was fucking hard.
Yeah.
I feel like I have the weight of the world on my shoulders. I don't know how I'm going to get through, but at the end of the day, I get to come home to you.
Yeah.
And that's worth fighting for.
Yeah.
And it's being honest about how hard it is,
Yeah.
but showing the people around you that despite how fucking hard it is, I'm going to be the leader. I'm going to show up.
Yeah.
And that requires that emotional attunement.
Yeah.
So sorry to cut in, but I just thought it was
was
super
great.
relevant. It's like this whole idea of masculinity, femininity. It's like being a man, being a leader is vulnerability amongst how hard it is.
Yep.
I talked about Trump, by the way. It's like, fight. Dude just got shot in the air, right?
Yes.
He's like, fight. We get to do that at home. We get
Yes.
shot in the air, show the fuck up. Yeah.
And that I love what you say, how you put it at the end, like that was really hard, but it makes it all worth it to come home to you.
Yes.
That there is like that, just adding that little bit at the end, reminding your wife, this is why I go out into the world. I think there's been so much conditioning and propaganda around, you know, like I hear a lot of women complaining about men and like how they've got so much, you know, I've got friends recently that just had twins, right? He's going to work. He's works from home maybe 1 or 2 days, but every other day he has to go. Now, all these women, so many women complain about the fact that men, you know, have it so much better, they think. This guy every morning comes in and his heart is broken. He said to his wife, I hate leaving you in bed with our twins going to work. All I do is think about you and the twins all day. Like for him, it's heartbreaking to leave his family and go out and have to earn the money to come home and keep a roof over their head. And I think what's so sad is we forget that. We forget to honor what men do to provide.
Yep.
You know, I have women that I have as clients who are in business and, you know, they get so angry at their husbands and I say to them, have you ever had to worry, like they might not be making money, right? Have you ever had to worry about the mortgage being paid? Have you ever had to worry about money, like being able to pay for groceries? No, I never have to worry about that. My husband. Imagine the weight of that constantly on your husband. Like I always have to make sure I have a roof over 4 kids and my wife. Like we don't appreciate enough like the stress that men go through on that. And I think that's where women and men come into competition.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And what you just shared is what every man wants to hear.
100%.
I don't know if you've heard the new Eminem album.
No.
Okay, you don't have to listen to it, but there's a song on there called Temporary. And it's Eminem's daughter, cassette tapes from 30 years ago. I've got a 3-year-old daughter. I'm about to have another daughter in December. I listened to that song in the sauna last week and I broke. I was sobbing. Because when I sit with myself, and every man listening to this who works hard can relate, when I really reflect on how much I've sacrificed time, energy, effort with my daughter, I will never get back. Every day I choose that instead of being with my daughter.
Yeah.
I choose to go and fight to provide.
Yeah.
And Rosie and Talia will never want for anything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of men listening right now who can relate to that. And they know they get to be more present. They know they get to emotionally be available and attuned. But then they get straight back to the grind. In this day and age, how do we break that cycle and find that balance? Because everything you've said is fucking gold until you're in that next fire at business or you have to get up early and you forget it and another year goes by. How do we strike that balance as human beings?
Okay, I love this question. And my answer might be a bit, there's a few parts to my answer, right? Now, first of all, we have to ask ourselves, why do we have children? Okay? You have to ask yourself that question. Do we have children because we love them and we want to create Like we want to raise them to be, successful, or do we want them to be joyful? Do we want them to be secure? Do we want them to be loving? Like what kind of people do we want to raise?
Can I tell you right now?
Yeah.
My biggest reason for wanting to be a father was to create an epic human being who is happy, full of joy, and adds value to the world.
Correct.
Because I didn't have that growing up.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier the past, everything we are, everything we do is our childhood manifest.
Yeah.
The only way our past affects us is if we invite it into the present.
Yeah.
So for me and most men that I know and work with, they want to be role models and leaders, but we sacrifice that and actually don't achieve that in the pursuit of success.
And I think what a lot of men, this is where integration is so important, right? If we don't understand the pain of our and trauma of our childhood and how it's impacted us, and we don't integrate it, we then recreate it, but in a different way. Now, let me give this to you in a different example. Now, I have a couple of clients who come from domestic violent relationships, so very abusive relationship. I have this one woman left a highly domestic violent relationship 4 years ago. And she left it, and because this man was so aggressive, so violent, so intimidating, because she didn't do any healing on her work and she didn't understand, she didn't pause and she didn't do the work to understand, why did I attract into this relationship? Why did I stay in this? Why was I in this? She didn't do any accountability. And she didn't attract another abusive man. Do you know what she did attract though? Someone who was completely opposite. So super soft, super feminine, super passive. Now she was with him for 2 years. Now she's in that relationship and she comes to me and she's like, Nerida, what's wrong with me? I left that relationship because I felt scared all the time. Now I want to leave this relationship because I'm disgusted in him and I'm fantasizing about my old partner. This is because she hasn't integrated her wound, okay? So she's gone from one extreme all the way to the other without coming into the middle. Now, what I see a lot of men do, I've got another client, male client who was obese as a kid. His parents did not teach him how to be healthy and how to eat well and how to exercise. So he kept saying, all he says to me is, I just want my kids to be healthy. But now what's happening is one of his daughters has an eating disorder because he's so psychotic about making sure everyone eats. Can you see what I mean?
Of course, yeah.
So we need to understand, okay, growing up with that wound caused this pain. Of course, I don't want to recreate that. But I'm going to integrate that and then I'm going to make sure that's a part of my values, but I'm also going to bring in other values. So I would argue that most men tend to think I want to provide because that's my way of loving my family.
Yep.
But in essence, and this is evidence-backed, children feel loved when they spend time with a parent. Time, T-I-M-E. You cannot refute that. If you go and build everything you want financially, but you have been absent, she will not grow up with self-worth and self-confidence because she will always wonder, why was my father not present? And that might be hard for men to hear.
No, that sort of stuff breaks me. And I love hearing it because that's what we get to hear. And sometimes we need that slap in the face because you don't want to hear it when your daughter's 18 or your son's 25. Yeah. But we forget it over and over again.
It's time. So if you want to sit here and say to me or any man, well, I'm out there doing the best that I can, I look at your calendar, right? I take people's calendar because what is on your calendar is what you believe is important.
Yeah.
And so what I say to people is understand that she needs your time and she needs your presence and she needs your love. And that's what kids need in order to grow up knowing I am a worthy human being. People love being around me. You know, we really underestimate how much joy and love and confidence a child gets when a parent is joyful in their presence. Because a lot of people think, well, I'm with my kids all the time, but are you like in joy? Are you playing? Are you laughing? Are you sitting there mirroring? You know, children, the way that they learn who they are in the world is they'll do something and they're watching for your reaction constantly.
Yep.
Now, if you're sort of checked out, they're going to start to, that's when self-doubt, that's when fear comes in, that's when inadequacy, a lot of people struggle with inadequacy, right? I would say that's the biggest emotion that people say it's anxiety, but most of all it's underneath it's inadequacy. People feel that because their first 7 years of life, their emotional home constantly they were bidding for connection and being rejected, being either turned away or turned against over and over and over again.
Yes.
So you can see all of these things intertwine, not just into your intimate relationship, but also into your parenting, everywhere.
Everywhere. You talked
Everywhere.
about responsibility. It's everything comes back to the person looking at you in the mirror.
Yeah.
Everything. So the way we raise our children, the way we run our business, the
Yeah.
way we communicate in our relationships,
Yeah.
it all comes back to us.
Yeah.
So if we know that our childhood has a massive bearing on who we become as an adult, we know that affects everything. We know that emotional intelligence, attunement is important. It comes back to this question, how do we make it a daily practice to work on those things?
Yeah.
Because if you look at most people's calendars,
Yeah.
60, 70, 80 hours a week of work,
Yeah.
a couple of hours on the relationship, not connected, not present,
Yeah.
zero work on themselves.
Yeah.
So we upgrade our phones, our cars, our tools. What about the person in the mirror?
Yeah.
What advice would you have for someone who's listening to this? They know that their relationship isn't the best it could be. They know they're not emotionally attuned. They know they're not the best parent. They know.
Yeah.
But they keep getting stuck in the pattern.
Yeah.
How do they, what's the first few steps of changing that?
Well, the first step is to understand why you're avoiding it.
Yes.
That's the first thing. What are you avoiding?
Yeah.
Most people are avoiding feeling inadequate or feeling shame, feeling fear, feeling rejected. Most men are terrified of leaning into their relationships with their wives because they are fearful they're going to be rejected. So the first thing is to understand that. What am I avoiding? Do I really have to work 60 hours a week, or am I avoiding something at home? Like if I died next week, or if my wife died next week, like what would be going through? I love that analogy around everything is a rubber ball except for your family, which is glass. You know, like really, I love those stories about people who've had crazy health scares, and it just helps them to realize, like, wake up to the fact that they only have one life. So you really have to ask yourself, like, do I actually definitely need to be here 60 hours a week, or could I get away with 40 hours of really effective work and spend more time at home? And if I'm not spending more time at home, why is that? There's a good chance you probably are avoiding your wife or your kids, and most men do because they actually are avoidant of being with themselves. Now, I used to think, I don't have children, but I have a niece and a nephew, and I spend a lot of time with them, you know. I used to think I was a really good auntie. Like I'd always spend time with them. I'd take them places. And then I started doing some work with Dr. Shafali. And I started being really honest with myself. And I was like, you know what? I actually don't play with them a lot. Like I'll play a little bit for 5 minutes and then I'll be like, all right, off you go. And so then when I started going around there, I started doing something different. I started leaving my phone in the car. And every time they'd come and ask me to play, I'd say yes. And then I would do this thing called stretch out the play. I would stay and play as long as I could. Now, when I first started doing this, like my nephew loved playing Lego. I felt very uncomfortable. Like I would sit down and then we'd play a couple of minutes and then I'd start to just feel a bit bored, right? So this is the interesting thing. I started to notice this. I'd want to go back and pick up my phone and just be on my phone scrolling while I was sort of talking and hanging out with them. But that's not full presence, right? And it was really interesting because as I did this experiment, my niece used to, every time I'd arrive at their house, she would run to the door. We had a very strong connection. But my nephew, I'd say, we didn't so much. He loved me, but he wouldn't like run to me. Now, after a couple of months of me just saying yes, 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 building Lego with him constantly, I started to notice he'd hear my car. He'd run to the door. Can we play this? Can we play that? And now our relationship's so strong. And funny thing, I started playing with like yellow, pink, and purple pieces of Lego. And then he started noticing this. So do you know what he'd start to do? He'd start to pull out the pink and yellow and purple Lego and put it in a special container for me. Here you go, Auntie Nez. This is the Lego you get to build with.
That's amazing.
Can you think about what goes on in a child's mind? I'm trying to get more connection with her, so I'm going to do this to get more connection.
Yeah.
Because this feels so good.
Yeah.
So our children are wired to want, they want to spend all their time with us. They literally do. And do you know what? You've got them for about 7 to 10 years and then that is like halved.
Yeah.
So like if anything, I say those 7 to 10 years, put work on the back burner and do everything you can to be there for those moments.
Yeah. Because
you are going to know your children for a lifetime as an adult, but only for the blink of an eye as a child.
Absolutely.
And you know, if you don't build that, what happens is there are 2 types of relationships that are built with parents in those first 7 years, connected or obligatory. Now, connected is genuine connection. I feel so safe and relaxed, and I actually love spending time with my parent because my parent gets me. They really get me. So I'm going to tell them everything. I'm going to share everything with them. I'm going to go to them over and over and over again because I know that it's a safe place to go. Or there's obligatory where it's like, oh, I love my parent and yeah, I might spend time with them and I want to be there and I want to have a relationship, but something feels a bit off. It's an obligatory. Like that's my relationship with my parents, right? Like I love them and I know they love me, but when I go and spend time with them, it feels hard.
Yes.
And that's because in the first 7 to 10 years, they didn't know how to build a connected relationship with me.
Yep.
So I ask parents, do you want to build a connected relationship with your kid? Because it's not going to just happen because you're out there buying them everything that they need. You need to show up at home and you need to build the skills of emotional attunement so that you're understanding when your child's going through upset, disappointment, sadness, fear, inadequacy, shame, anger. And then you can reflect that back to them. Oh, I can see you're really angry. Are you okay? I'm right here for you.
Absolutely. And how could you possibly be a phenomenal parent who teaches those things and understands those things if you don't understand yourself?
That's right. That's right.
I truly believe everyone on the planet should be, and it's not going to happen. And I don't like to use the language should, gets to be obsessed with becoming the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
Because that's when you become the best partner, the best parent, the best person on the planet.
Yeah.
But so many of us don't do that.
Well, there's a great quote that I love. The definition of hell is getting to the end of your days on your deathbed and meeting the person that you could have become. Like, what a tragic moment to get to the end of your life and look at the person you could have been, but you just didn't pursue.
Yeah. Yeah. We get stuck in the patterns. We have a guy we work with. He makes $80 million a year. He feels like it's not enough.
Yeah.
He feels like he should be more present. He feels the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Yeah.
And he's stuck in that pattern.
Yeah.
And guess where that pattern comes from?
Childhood.
Exactly.
Every time.
Exactly.
Because it's never about the money. It's never about the partner. It's never about people. We live in this world where people think if only I do XYZ, I'll finally feel XYZ.
Yes.
So there's a part of my programming and conditioning because I grew up in a home where I felt very isolated, where it's like if I can just meet someone and have children, I'll finally have my own family and I'll feel connected and loved. Chances are that's not going to happen. I'm going to feel stressed. I'm going to feel overwhelmed. I'm going to feel disconnected. I'm going to feel misunderstood. That's a part of relationships. That's a part of being a human being, right? But when I can learn how to build that connection, love, security, safety within myself, naturally I'm a magnet for those things and they just add to it, but they aren't the source of me feeling that. A lot of men think if only they suffer with inadequacy, right? They were made to feel inadequate by their father or their mother. And so what they do is they go out into the world and they think, I'm just going to build an amazing, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to make this money, I'm going to buy this, then I'll finally feel good about who I am. And then as soon as they get there, it's just like, it doesn't fulfill them and they just move on to the next thing and the next thing. And that's why I say, are you really working 70 hours a week to provide for your family or are you chasing a wound? Yes. Are you trying to fill a wound that can't be filled?
And when is enough?
Well, it never is. It never is, right?
Yeah.
When have you ever heard someone go, oh, I'm finally making $80 million a year. I'm done. I'm good. Now I can go and be at peace. No. Because if it's not coming from that place, you know, and that's what I encourage people to get curious about. This goal that you're chasing, where is that coming from? Is it coming from a place of worthiness or is it coming from a place of lack?
Yeah.
Because it's coming from a place of lack, you're only pursuing more lack.
Yeah.
You're trying to fill a void. But what you actually need to do is you need to do the work to become more emotionally intelligent, to mature so that you feel adequate. You change your beliefs, the way that you think, the way that you feel every day. Do you know what I find so interesting? Most people will get up and exercise every day. Most people will have a shower every day because it makes them feel good, right? Not many people get up and emotionally discipline themselves to create, to have the emotional home they want to have. Every 24 hours, you have to wake up and you have to do something to set yourself to become the person you want to be that day. And then only the last 24 hours, you've got to do it again. You've got to do it again. You've got to do it again. So whether that looks like meditation, whether that looks like journaling, whether that looks like just beliefs, like change, really disciplining the way that you think. I really wish people would think about the way that you think being like leaves, weeds that you're pulling out, right? Every time you notice a self-critical, self-shaming, loathing thought, you have to, if you would not say that to another human being, you have to become so disciplined with not saying it to yourself.
Yes.
You have to start to change the way that you think, because when you change the way that you think, you change the way that you feel. When you change the way you feel, you change the way you behave. When you change the way you behave, you change the results that you get.
Absolutely. That's what we spoke about at AREC: thoughts, feelings, actions, reactions.
Love it.
Another great way of framing it is when you have a negative thought, that's okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a person in your life who's just really negative, and when you're around them, you feel that energy? You've had that, right?
Yes. I used to be that.
Oh, we've all been
Yes.
that person. So imagine that person comes to your house, they knock on the door, and you let them in, and you feed them tea and biscuits. And now you're entertaining that thought, and it's just yapping in your ear. Now, it's normal to have negative thoughts.
Yep.
And it's normal to have negative feelings. What works really well is going, knock, knock, I'm not home right now, and you just don't open the door.
Yeah.
You acknowledge the thought is
Yes.
there, but as soon as you open that door, you're fucked.
Mhm.
Another example of this, my GM, Sam, he always says, how are you today? Not too bad. What is his brain hearing?
Bad,
Too
bad,
bad. It's all it's hearing. It's too bad. So he keeps picking up on it. I'm okay. I'm good. Yeah. So we've covered a lot of stuff. I really want to talk about, what does a woman want from a man, and what does a man want from a woman? So let's say we
Love this
coach
question.
husbands, fathers, business owners. You're a successful guy. You work hard all day. You know you need to work on yourself, your emotional attunement. For the woman listening, how can they be better wives and better partners for men going through that? And then on the flip side as well, how can men do that for the woman? What would you say for women?
Yes, I love this question so much. And the first thing I would say is, let's recognize how we're so different. So
Hallelujah. Somebody actually believes that.
we are so different, and
Yeah.
we need to honor polarity in a relationship. Like, you're what, 6'2", 6'4". You're not you're a big, strong man. You're not attracted to another 6'4" strong man.
No, Rosie's tiny.
Yeah, you're attracted to feminine,
Yeah.
petite, soft. You're attracted. I'm feminine. I'm soft. I'm attracted to something different, bigger, stronger, more muscular. Right. So that's polarity. Understanding how we are different. Now, women crave a few things: love, understanding, safety. Women want to hear, "You're so beautiful. I love you." Now, men, ironically, those things aren't as high. Men crave trust and men crave admiration, appreciation, and respect. Men want to hear, "I respect you and I trust you." Now, before people start jumping on and complaining, women also want respect and trust. Men also want love and understanding. But what ranks higher, I've sat with thousands of men and women, and every time they complain to me about their relationships, with women, it's some form of, "He doesn't love me," or "He doesn't understand me." With men, it's some form of, "She doesn't appreciate me, she doesn't respect me."
Yes.
Every day of the week.
Yeah.
So let's understand that first of all. She is seeking your love and your understanding. So that's why emotional intelligence is so important.
Yeah.
Women, he is craving your trust and your respect. So criticism, that needs to stop. And this is
Yeah.
the biggest thing I see, right? The biggest problem I see today is women are in criticism and controlling behaviors, which leave a man feeling completely untrusted and not respected.
Yeah.
But men also have inadequacy wounds that attract those kinds of women to them, because this is another interesting thing, right? As children, now I really believe this. The blueprint that we have as children, like the energy that we have with the parent that we crave love from the most, we will go out into the world and energetically attract someone just like that and then try to change them.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you this, men say to me that they want a woman that trusts and respects them, but yet I see these same men date lots of women that are lovely, kind, nurturing, loving women, and they bypass those women every day of the week and go for the woman that's controlling, critical, and has wounds.
Why?
Because they deep down have wounds too. So they're attracted to a woman because then they're trying to change the other person, right? So it's a part of our programming. We grow up with pain, and we think, like we go into a relationship thinking it'll relieve us from that pain, and it does for a year or two. But then all of a sudden, all that old pain starts to come back up, and we start thinking, "Oh, you must be the problem." But yet you've had that pain your whole life.
Yeah.
It's just that you forgot about it for a little while because this woman was like beautiful and attractive and making you feel good. And then all of a sudden that becomes kind of not the newness of it wanes, right?
Yeah.
So what we have to understand is what I find so interesting, right, is we go into relationships and we say we want something, but yet we've picked someone who's the complete opposite of that. I meet men all the time that complain about their women being, harsh and not soft and not nurturing, like, abrasive, maybe a little bit controlling. But it's like she was that way when you met her.
Yeah.
Because emotional maturity, right? Like for me, I want a man who's emotionally available.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell a man's emotional availability within 5 minutes of talking to him. So if I go on one date and we having a laugh, there's a bit of surface level chit chat, I might ask him a question. And I'm observing, right? He will either respond and go into that connection with me, or he'll deflect and change the topic.
Yeah.
Now I'll give anyone 2 chances, right? Now I'll go again. Let's just say he deflects and changes the topic. Then maybe we go on a second date and I might ask him something deeper and then he does it again.
Mm-hmm.
That is my cue to then stop and say, I can see this man is not open to connect with me on the level that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So I honor myself. I want someone who is emotionally mature. So I'm going to end this and go and find someone who is.
Yeah.
How many times do people ignore that and try to change that person?
Yeah.
And
all
that
the
is
time.
Exactly. So what I encourage everyone to do, if you're in a relationship right now that's not feeling good, ask yourself, what is it about your relationship that you wish was different? Was that person ever that person from the beginning?
Yeah.
And that's where radical responsibility comes in, because then you start to go, you know what? This woman was always this way. This man was always this way.
Yeah.
That's up to me to accept them.
Okay.
Okay.
But let's say you're with your wife for 20 years
Yep.
and you listen to this and you go, you know what?
Yeah.
I need to work on myself.
Yeah.
However, she does criticize me in public.
Yeah.
Criticize in private,
Yeah.
praise in public.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you realize that your wife does criticize you and it causes this emotion, this wound to come up.
Yeah.
You don't just ignore that wound. You work on it.
Totally.
How do you get her on side to also come on that journey and own her part in the relationship?
Well, unfortunately, you can't make anyone see what they're not ready to see.
Of course.
Okay. You can say, what I encourage people to do, when we lead with accountability, accountability begets accountability.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm in a relationship, right, and I'm seeing my own patterns and I'm wanting to change, what I would do is I'd go to my partner and I'd say, look, I love you and I really want this to work. And I can see that, in the past, these things have happened in our relationship and I've contributed to them, you've contributed to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see in the past that this may have been normal for us.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's really left me feeling really inadequate and disconnected from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel very lonely in this relationship.
Yeah.
I would love for us to work on our communication so that we don't criticize each other, we don't put each other down, and we understand each other on a deeper level. And I'm willing to invest in getting someone to support us in that. Are you open to that?
Yes, that's powerful. And a lot of guys will actually avoid that and put up with the pain of no sex, criticism, a lack of respect, a lack of understanding for years because they feel like what you just said is more painful than actually dealing with it. Does that make sense?
Yes, I totally get it.
Every day I see this. Like I went live in the group yesterday and I talked about Trump and fight. And it was a metaphor for life.
Yeah.
And so many guys, super successful guys, 20, 30 million a year, successful.
Yeah.
They're like, I need to have this conversation with my wife. I need to stand up for myself. And then they don't do it.
Yeah.
So
because they're so scared.
They're so terrified.
And I think what so many people struggle with, like, is the framing around having these conversations.
Yeah.
When you lead with love, and, I always say lead with love. There's the, standard or the request in the middle and then love. You can't go wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And if you do, then there needs to be consequences, right?
Yeah.
I really want to say to everyone, we all get to have the love that we want and we deserve.
Yeah.
But it's not so, what I've realized? My whole life I grew up thinking, I want this incredible relationship. Was I the version of the woman that could create that? No. I couldn't even communicate when I was upset. I remember 2 years ago, like, something happened with this guy that I'd been recently seeing where I was so upset And I could not even communicate it with him because I was so reactive. So then I had to see it and I had to be vulnerable. We have to do the work to become the person that can create the relationship that we want.
Yeah.
Most people think that someone else should do the work to bring that relationship to us. You need to learn how to communicate. You need to learn how to express your emotions. You need to learn how to check in with yourself. You need to learn how to honor your boundaries, how to honor your values. And when you start doing all these things, you become the man that is worthy of that relationship. You then co-create it with your partner.
Yes.
She will follow you and take your lead if you lead in that way. But I think what so many people do is everyone's looking for someone else to bring them what they're unwilling to bring themselves.
Yeah. And you mentioned a word there, work.
Yeah.
It requires work. And this is why
100% it
coaching,
does.
like your coaching, our coaching, all the coaches out there are so important. We seem to think that we should just know how to communicate and have great relationships and deal with our shit. It's not how the world works.
Well, it's not how we were taught.
Yeah.
Like, you think about it. Was that modeled in your home?
No.
Did you see your parents manage conflict well and repair? Did you see your parents exactly? So we can't expect that we're going to know these skills if we don't actively remember, oh yeah, I remember mum and dad doing that. I remember them talking to me about my emotions. I remember them. No, most of us, we've never lived in a time before. We have more access to information now than a king or a president did 50 years ago. So we have the internet at our fingertips. Like, if you can't afford coaching, honestly, the internet, books, podcasts, it's all free if you're really, really ready. I created this saying: no amount of money can help you see something you're not willing to see. No amount of not having the money can stop you when you're ready. Yep. When I had my gym, my business, the gyms, I was doing really well, right? And I was paying for psychologists every month without fail. I wasn't seeing anything. I wasn't changing. That was 10 years. All of a sudden, overnight, businesses are closed. My accountant says to me, I think you're going to go bankrupt. You don't have the funds to, keep your stuff going. And I had no money. And yet I read every book I could. I listened to every podcast. I was deep diving on the internet, YouTube. I healed more in that 6 months than I did in 15 years with no money at all, because I was finally ready to see it.
You became obsessed. You were obsessed with it. And that's what I mean. We upgrade our phones and we spend more on our cars and our screens than we do on ourselves. And there's this turning point for a lot of people when they don't just listen, because you can get it for free.
Yeah.
There are more psychologists, coaches, books, mentors, YouTube videos than ever. But we're more stressed, depressed, anxious, divorced than ever.
Yeah.
There is a turning point for a lot of people where they go, you know what? I'm not just going to listen. I'm going to implement. I'm going to follow a plan. I'm going to use a system. Yeah. Which is what you put out there, right?
I agree that having a coach that can point out directly to you and pick you up on, your flaws, your inability, the ways that your patterns of behavior are coming in is it's like paying to, for a short period of time to get something done that could take you years and years and years to learn yourself. I do believe in the power of one-on-one coaching.
Yep.
And I do think that and I just think so many people are willing to invest in every other part of their life, but they won't invest in coaching. And yet, did you know that emotional intelligence, which is what you do too, really, contributes to 60% of your happiness and enjoyment in your professional and personal life?
Yeah. I thought it was even more.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Think about every dollar you've invested in yourself, how much it's come back to you tenfold.
Yeah. It's about 400 grand now.
Yeah.
I've spent on coaches, mentors, systems, processes, and it's made us millions of dollars. But more importantly, it's allowed us to have conversations like this and help other people in the same way.
Exactly.
But it requires valuing yourself.
Yeah.
A lot of men and women don't value themselves. They value the Botox and the facials and the cars and the toys.
Yeah.
But none of that shit matters.
Well, that's because it's the easy way.
Yeah, it's the pill. It's the bullet.
It's the bullet. It's the easy way. Whereas doing the work, looking at yourself, there's a great quote that I love. It's easier to witness your shadow in another than it is in yourself. So we all, when it comes to other people, we can so easily see the issues. But when you turn that in on yourself, that's hard. It's painful.
It is.
And it's also, I believe, the key to a joyful life, because we all really are on this earth for one thing: self-actualization, to become and to grow and to develop and to evolve. We're not here to be happy. You know, the Bible never talked about being happy. It talked about the experience. It talked about growing. It talked about becoming, right?
Yes.
We've been lied to that it should all be about happy. Actually, people that pursue pleasure over and over and over, they're avoiding something and they're running from something, right?
Yes.
You think about it, right? It's not pleasure that brings you joy. It's overcoming adversity. It's like that moment you're in the sauna, you're listening to Eminem's song and you broke down because deep down that reflected something about you that you could relate to and connect with.
Yes.
That's actually you realizing, wow, I am this man. I've become this man through all of my pain. That's you going through a moment of self-actualization.
Yes.
I always used to be so fascinated by this. When people get married and it's like should be the most joyful day of their life, why do so many people cry? Do you know why? It's because they're standing there at that altar and for their whole life they've wondered, am I worthy of love? Am I worth being lovable? Like am I worthy of someone's love and commitment? And then they're standing there in that moment breaking down because in that moment they're realizing, yes, I am.
Yes.
I am worthy.
Yes.
This person is here choosing me. That's what we all really yearn for in life. Like most of us are living with that wound.
Yeah.
Am I enough?
Yeah.
Am I worthy of love?
Yeah. I believe that gets solved by proving to yourself that you are worthy of love.
Yeah.
Self-belief, self-love, self-confidence.
Yeah.
It's not something you just get overnight. It's
No.
earned. It's earned through doing the work. It's earned through listening to podcasts like this. It's earned through making those difficult changes or having those difficult conversations.
Yeah.
But once you get into it, it's like a bug. It's addictive. It's so powerful.
It's the best.
And you guys should have done this 20 years ago.
Yes.
Now, mindful of time, I really want to touch on this before
Yep.
we finish up.
Yep.
So we talked about what women and men want and
Yep.
crave. Women is understanding,
Yep.
right? What was the second one?
Love and support.
And support. And men is respect and appreciation.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
So for a woman listening to this, what are one or two things she can do today
Mm-hmm.
to give more of that to her man? And for men, what are one or two things they can do for the woman to take away from today
Great
to
question.
give that?
You know what? I would say for women, being vulnerable and just acknowledging like your man and, you know, women, the biggest thing I see with women is they are wired to spot the ways that their man is failing them and they cannot focus their attention on the ways that he is showing up. So I think the best thing you could do as a woman is to just sit down and ask yourself, where is he showing up for me and where is he trying and where do I see him really giving to me, and acknowledge that. And just and the funny thing is so many women struggle to actually verbalize this face to face. So then I say, if you can't say it to him with eye contact, then send a message, send a text and just say, hey darling, I've just listened to this podcast and I just want you to know that even though things feel hard right now, I do see all the ways that you love me and that you show up for me and our family and that you provide and that you protect. And I just want you to know how much I love and admire you for that. That would be my number one thing for any woman. If you cannot look him in the eyes when he gets home tonight and say to him, I've just had this moment where I've listened to this podcast and I've just realized how much I am so controlling and critical of you and I'm so sorry. I'm going to try and do better. Send it in a message. And for men, I would say, you know, same sort of thing, be vulnerable. And I would say, you know, think about the ways that you are avoiding, most men avoid, the ways that you are avoiding connecting with her because deep down you're feeling these emotions. And I would say, have a conversation with her and say, look, I just listened to something today. And I just want you to know I do love you and I do think you're the most beautiful woman on the earth and I'm so glad I married you. And I know sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but I'm doing everything I can to try and do my best. But I want to be here for you and I want to listen to you. And if you ever need to come and talk to me, I'm right here. And I promise I'll do my best to listen without getting defensive. And, you know, I know sometimes when you come to me with your emotions, I can feel myself pull away or get distracted. And that's not because I don't love you. It's because sometimes I feel suffocated by the stuff that you bring me. But I'm going to practice leaning into that more and more. If you can just, you know, give me time to get used to that, I want to be able to be this person for you.
Beautiful. I love that. And by the way, if any of that sounds difficult, it is.
Yeah,
It's difficult.
is.
It's like when you're learning how to walk.
Yes.
The first time a child stands, it
Yes.
falls over 100 times.
Yeah.
The parents don't go, you idiot, and just stop it from
That's
walking
right.
ever again.
Exactly.
I'll give you an example of this. I spoke at AREC a few months ago, and everyone there was telling me I did a great job.
Yeah.
And my ego was on fire. Not because I felt like I was the man, because I felt like I'd given love.
Yeah.
Like these random people wanted to take photos and shared how valuable and impactful it was.
Yeah.
My wife didn't say a thing.
Oh.
Now, she hasn't seen me speak in years. I'm a very different human to who I was years ago.
Yeah.
So we're together the whole day. Rosie's taken the day to be with me. We get home, nothing. It gets to like 8 p.m. I'm sitting in bed. I'm like, shit, I need to have a clearing conversation with her. Like, just ask her what's up. And she's laying in bed, and I look at her and she looks at me and she has tears in her eyes. And she goes, I'm so incredibly proud of you. And I heard that and I was like, I love you so much. And that's all I needed to hear. So for any woman listening to this who struggles to do that and is critical, it is hard. It's extremely difficult for my wife to do that. It's also extremely difficult for me to tell her I've had a shit day without being a cunt. like, you know, how was your day? Shit.
Yeah.
It is difficult to take a breath and go, honestly, babe, I really struggled today and I know I might have been an asshole. And these things are difficult because we haven't practiced them.
Yeah.
You just gave us the framework.
Mm.
Now it's on the listeners to take that framework and lean in.
Yeah.
And do it despite how fucking hard it is.
Yeah.
And guess what happens when you do that once?
Yeah.
You prove to yourself it's possible.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to ask one or two final questions and then we'll finish up. If anyone's listening to this right now, what advice would you give them to create a daily practice of emotional attunement?
Yes.
That's clearly the key here.
Yeah.
What happened in your childhood? How do you feel? How do you think? Awareness.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
one critical thing they can do from today to practice that?
So
Besides buying your course.
Yes, but I do have a course, Emotional Intelligence
We'll put it
101.
down below.
Pop it in the link. You get 50% off. Use the code LOVE50.
Absolutely.
So for $100, less than, a psych session, you've got 6 weeks of lessons there. But
Amazing.
if you don't buy the course, the first thing I would say to you is go onto Google and search emotion wheel. Download a copy of that onto your phone, put it on your fridge, put it everywhere in your home, especially if you have kids. We don't have a mental health pandemic. We have an emotional attunement pandemic. So many kids have no idea about emotions and how to connect to them. So every single day, look at that wheel and just ask yourself, write down the top 3 to 4 emotions that you're noticing that you're feeling. Now, let yourself write. It doesn't need to, you can feel, frustrated and irritated, but also feel a sense of excitement. Things can be opposite, right? They don't need to be all heavy or all light. None are good or bad. None are right or wrong. Let's just let go of all that and let's just allow ourselves to be with the experience. So every single day, just start noticing it and just start checking in and writing it down, and don't place any judgment on it, okay? And then what you'll do is you'll start to notice a pattern. Oh, okay, I'm seeing a lot of anger emotions coming up. Oh, I'm noticing a lot of the fear emotions coming up. Okay. Then what I want you to do is, if you really want to change this, write down, look at the 5 main emotions that you seem to be having a lot, which most people it's 3 or 4. That's your emotional home. They're the emotions that you felt most from 0 to 7. And they're usually a blend of the emotions your parents had. Then write down next to each emotion, write down the exact opposite. So for me, my emotional home was sadness, loneliness, confusion, shame, and rejection. So what's the opposite of sadness? Happiness.
Yeah.
The opposite of confusion, clarity. The opposite of loneliness, connection. The opposite of shame, acceptance. The opposite of rejection, acceptance. So I now actively work to cultivate those feelings within myself. So if I'm really noticing I'm needing more connection, is that connection with myself or connection with others? How am I going to lean into that need this week? Or if it's I'm noticing I'm craving more happiness. Okay, what can I do to bring about more joy? I'll go and spend time with my niece and nephew. I'll take them to the playground in the park and I'll actively, or I might sit down and watch a really funny movie. So it's like, it's the art of learning how to take care of yourself emotionally. What is it that I need? That is when you really build self-esteem. When you can look at yourself and I look at you, right? You would do anything for your wife and your kids. But do you do the same for yourself? Do you check in and go, okay, what do I need today? What can I give myself, in a loving way? That would be my first, and do it. If you can't do it every day, do it as often as you can. Start with once or twice a week on weekends. whatever that looks like. And it doesn't need to be a whole hour thing. It might just be, I'm noticing I'm really stressed. Okay, maybe I'm going to go and have a cold shower and just breathe, just slow down my breathing and just in through the nose, out through the mouth. Like, or maybe I need connection. Can I go and hang out with a mate and be a bit more vulnerable and share with someone that I'm struggling? Or do I need to reach out to a coach and talk to a coach?
Yeah.
There is always whatever it is that you need. Like, you never have to feel alone in this world. Like, I have felt so alone and struggled with suicide ideation to a point where I desperately tried to take my life. And it's not because I didn't want to be here anymore. Deep down, it was because I had a fear that there was something wrong with me, that I was the only one that felt this way. And the thing that I've learned since working in this, and I work with a lot of very successful, high-profile people that on Instagram you think have their shit together. We all struggle with pain. We all do. That's the human experience. So whatever it is you're going through right now, you are not alone. If you start opening up, the only thing that keeps you lonely is you not talking about it. The minute you start to talk about it, you'll have heaps of people going, oh my God, me too, me too, me too. So that would be the first thing I would say.
Awesome. Love that. And for anyone listening to this and hearing that and going, yeah, that makes sense, but I'm busy, but I have a lot on, it is actually going to help you become more successful.
Oh my God.
You're going to make more money. You're going to have more time. You're going to have more peace. You're going to have better relationships. The investment you make into what you just shared, the return on investment is infinite.
100%, because life is all about people, right? Like, if you can't even relate to yourself and connect to yourself, you're not going to be able to do it for others.
Exactly.
So these skills, like, my business has blown up since I've done this. Like, my relationships, my own mental health and well-being. Like, I am the happiest I've ever been. Like, I'm the most stable emotionally than I've ever been finally at 41 years old. So yes, I tell you, this is the most important stuff. And especially if you're a parent, it is the number one skill I would encourage you to dive into. Because you think about it, right? The sign of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result.
Yes.
At some point, if you're feeling so stuck, something has to change. And that is your actions.
Yeah, otherwise you'll get forced to change.
That's right. Something will happen to wake you up.
Absolutely.
100%.
Amazing. Well, that has been phenomenal. Was there anything you wanted to share with the listeners or add before we finish up?
No, just that I honor how hard it can be. Like, I know a lot of your listeners are male, and I honor how hard it can be for men in the world. Like, for women, typically, women do have friends that they can go to and talk to. Women tend to feel more comfortable, sharing emotions and talking about their struggles. And the biggest thing I see with the men that I work with is they feel so alone. And I just, I'm so love what you do so much. And I just, like, oh my God, I wish there was another 100 of you in the world, because the world needs it. Men are so alone in the world. And I just, for men to feel so alone, for them to know that it's a lie. And in relationship you can feel alone, it's a lie. You get to have the love that you want. So I just encourage anyone, if this has really resonated, please reach out, connect with me, and just let me know. I love hearing what big people's takeaways were, and if it's resonating. But just that, life is what you make of it. And you can either be a bystander, you can be a passenger, or you can dive right in and give it everything you've got, because it's over in a blink.
Yeah. You never know when you're going to go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.